Good afternoon. My name is Victor Johnson. I'm a career facilitator with Goodwill Columbus Workforce Development. And welcome to our session, our afternoon session for employment skills. And one of those skills that you really need is conflict resolution. Now, we're going to talk about conflict resolution, but we're also going to talk about things that you can do so that you can reduce the conflict and ways you can deal with conflict in the office place. So let's get started. Okay, so what do you think about when you hear the word conflict? Do you think about war? Do you think about a fight? Do you think about some kind of physical altercation? Or do you just think about an argument, something like that? Well, you can see in the definitions of conflict on the slide, yeah, it does include things that could be considered, a physical fight or even, war. But when you're looking at these definitions, you also have to remember that these definitions also entail things that are peaceful, as a matter of fact. Conflict can happen and does happen every day in our lives. We need conflict to help make decisions and sometimes to help us change because of certain situation. So conflict is not always bad, and conflict doesn't always take two people. You can have a conflict in your mind. You can be conflicted about whether you're going to have pizza for dinner or chicken for dinner. If you're on a diet, you can be conflicted about, do I just have a salad or do I have a salad and a steak and dessert and a drink and another dessert? But that's the kind of thing that makes you grow, helps you grow. And even between people, there is growth through conflict. So conflict isn't a bad word. It's just representative of what we need to do to keep moving. And there are two major causes of conflict, especially when it's, conflict between two people. And one is communication or poor communication. So, maybe there's misinformation, maybe there's a lack of complete information, or maybe there's no information whatsoever. And think about when you've gone into a situation, and someone has told you something and it was completely wrong. Someone gave you directions and the directions were completely wrong. How did you feel about that? And when you talk to that person again, how did you speak to that person? When we don't get the right information, it causes a conflict because we're not sure what to do and we're not sure how to follow directions. The other major cause of conflict is emotion. And, if you let emotions drive your decisions, sometimes, that really doesn't work out for people. Can you think about a time where, you were really mad or maybe even really, really happy about something or really sad about something? And while you were in that frame of mind, you made a decision. And later on, you felt like, I wish I had thought about this a little bit more. That's what happens when we let our emotions drive us sometimes. But we can get rid of that. And, emotions can block clear thinking, especially, when it's a deep emotion, anger, depression, even love. You can make bad decisions because your head's in the clouds. So think about conflict and think about especially between two people, the major reasons for conflict, information or poor information and emotions. Now, because we're talking about employment skills, we are going to talk about conflict at work. And what kind of conflict can you have at work? Well, there's external conflict, and that's someone outside of your office, outside of your building, outside of your, on the other side of the counter. That's a customer, someone who needs something or needs some kind of service from you. And then there's internal. conflict that can happen between your coworkers, between your supervisors, between, in your own mind. But remember, it says I said supervisors, but we can also say if you supervise someone, there can be a conflict between you and the person that you supervise. And, think about a time maybe you had a conflict at work. How did you deal with it? How did you resolve it? Was it a peaceful resolution? Was it an effective resolution? Or did it just make things worse and you just couldn't talk to that person anymore? We can control how conflict resolves. We can control our own response to conflict to make the situation better, not only for us, but also for the other person. I like this cartoon, it says someone calling themselves a customer says that they want something called service. And, if you've ever been in the service field, you know that not every customer comes in happy. And likewise, when you're going in someplace, you understand that sometimes the person who's going to serve you, maybe they're not too happy or maybe they've had a bad day. But using your skills at conflict resolution, you can make the situation a lot more easy to go through. And how do we do that? How do we do conflict resolution? How do we make things better? Well, first, work on your communication skills. Remember, one of the two causes of conflict is poor information. So whether you're communicating to someone or listening to someone, you've got to sharpen your skills. And sharpening your skills in communication includes listening, engaged listening through focused observation. That is just, you want to be in that situation, in that moment, with that person, listening to them, and not just hearing the words they speak, but listening to the content and the meaning behind what they're saying. Think about how you feel when you know someone is really listening to you. And think about how it builds trust and it builds rapport between people. And asking open-ended questions is another way you can do it. You don't assume you know how people feel. Remember the other part of the road of the barriers to good communication, or one of the things that causes conflict, is emotions. And when you assume you know how someone is feeling, sometimes you've just made the wrong assumption. Think about how you would want someone to ask you a question. You wouldn't want someone to say, "You're angry, aren't you? You're mad at me." Instead, ask the person, "How do you feel? What are you feeling right now?" They're the ones who are feeling the emotion, so let them describe it. It may not be as bad as you think it is. It might be worse than you think it is. But you'll get a clearer picture and a clearer understanding, and they will appreciate the opportunity to express themselves without thinking that someone is assuming they know what they feel. Another way to build those professional communication skills is by using I statements. And we're going to talk about those a little bit later. Right now, we're going to keep on with the engaged, focused observation and asking open-ended questions. When you ask open-ended questions or someone gives you a response, what they're actually giving you is feedback. And feedback is something that you really need. It keeps the lines of communication open, and it's very useful if you want to advance in your career. Think about it. How many times, or have you ever gone to your supervisor or your manager and said, "How am I doing? What do you think of my work so far?" Well, what you're asking for is their feedback. And you may not like their feedback. You may not like what they tell you, but good or bad, that feedback is now a tool for you to improve your performance and prepare yourself to get that raise or to get that promotion with more responsibilities. So whether you're giving feedback or receiving feedback, remember it's a building process for both you and the person who's either talking to you or listening to you. So be open to feedback. Don't let your emotions cloud, what you're hearing. Be open to it and take it as constructive criticism. Now, I told you we'd get back to the I statement. What is an I statement? It's something that allows you to take a respectful approach to dealing with conflict. And when you are respecting someone, you reduce the emotion in the situation. You can make that situation easier to deal with. When you're doing an I message, what you're talking about are your experience, your feelings in this situation. You're not putting some kind of emotion on the other person. You're talking about how you feel. And when you use an I message, it helps keep you from blaming the other person or shaming the other person. Maybe it is something that they did, but have you ever had someone blame you for something? Even if you did it, it doesn't feel good when someone blames you. Or has anyone ever shamed you in public? That just brings up emotion to the forefront right away. And you don't want to feel like that. So just remember that person that you're talking to, the person that you have a conflict with, they don't want to feel like that either. If you use I messages, you can lead that to a more cooperative communication between you and the people you work with. So here's an example of what an I message is and what it isn't. So here's the first one. This is a blaming statement. Okay, so I'll try to do my best at acting here. So, Bob, you are so lazy. You know you're supposed to clean the dishes at the end of your shift, and you said you would. You are the reason it's always a mess around here. Now, if you're Bob, how are you going to react to that? I've just blamed you, and if anybody's standing around, I've just shamed you too. So Bob might say, hey, don't call me lazy. I do a lot of work around here. Besides, you're not my boss. Just leave me alone. Think about it. If you blame or shame someone, they're going to react emotionally. And that's the kind of response you might get. So think about the I message. Now, I message, remember, talks about your feelings, your responses, your emotions, okay? And so here's an I message for the same situation. Bob, I get frustrated when I get to work and the dishes haven't been done. It puts me behind in my work because I have to do the dishes before I do anything else. Now, Bob, hopefully, and remember, you cannot control how someone reacts, but you're giving that person the opportunity to react without emotion and considering the situation and allowing them to have an opportunity to listen to you and to hear what you're saying and understand it. So with that, when I say, I'm frustrated, I get to work and the dishes aren't done, and you said you would do the dishes. And then I have, I'm way behind because I have to do the dishes and then I have to start on my regular work. Well, in a situation like that, Bob might say, okay, I get it. Because I know what it feels like, to come in and you have to start your shift and you have to do something. You're already behind. I understand that. So, you know what? I'll make sure I get the dishes done at the end of my shift. That's how it could happen. And that's more likely how it would happen if you use an I message. So remember, when you're communicating and you're trying to get through a conflict, take the emotion out of it. Listen to the person. Use iMessages. Work on your professional communication skills. Be that person, in the workplace who takes the time to understand what someone else is going through, who takes the time to really listen and gives clear messages so that the person is getting good information and the person doesn't react with their emotions. So that's our first part of conflict resolution, and we'll be doing more on conflict resolution in the days to come. That's it for today. I'd like to thank Valerie very much for being our moderator in the chat room. Thank you also for watching today. Please visit us at our Goodwill Columbus Workforce Development Facebook page. And have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.